The Irish are often credited with the early production of whiskey, and the world has been a fan ever since. Whiskey is now distilled in over 25 countries worldwide, and we are going to take a long sip of weird in today's episode of 5 Weird Things. Welcome to the channel. You know, I really enjoy whiskey, but it makes me louder and more argumentative than usual, and I prefer it on ice without a mixer. For those that do like it, how do you drink it? Let me know in the comments. First, the things we should know. Whiskey is a distilled alcoholic beverage made from fermented grain mash. The grains used in whiskey production can include barley, corn, rye, and wheat. Whiskey can be enjoyed in various ways, including neat, in other words with no ice, on the rocks, which is with ice, or as a base for cocktails. Tasting whiskey involves assessing its color, its nose or aroma, its palate or flavor, and finish. Weird thing number 5, the whiskey sour. The classic cocktail, the whiskey sour, is said to have been invented as a remedy for scurvy during the 18th century British Navy. The combination of citrus, lemon, and spirits, whiskey, helped prevent the disease, which was kind of the scourge of the Navy at that time. Weird thing number 4. There are various types of whiskey, each with its own characteristics and production regulations. Some well-known types include Scotch whiskey, produced in Scotland, often made from malted barley and aged for a minimum period in oak barrels. Irish whiskey, produced in Ireland, typically triple distilled and aged for a certain period in wooden casks. Bourbon, produced in the United States primarily from corn and aged in new charred oak barrels. Rye whiskey can be produced in the United States or Canada with a higher proportion of rye in the mash bill. Tennessee whiskey, similar to bourbon but undergoes an additional filtration process known as the Lincoln County process. Weird thing number 3, the oddities of distilling whiskey. As with any process that's been around for hundreds of years, distilling whiskey has its odd and yes, weird facts. Mash bills and grains. The grain mixture used in whiskey production is called a mash bill. The term moonshine originated during the Prohibition era when illegal distillers would often work at night by the light of the moon to avoid detection. Moonshine versus whiskey. While moonshine is often associated with illegal homemade spirits, it's essentially unaged whiskey. Distillers can legally produce and sell moonshine if they adhere to regulations and pay taxes. The angel's share and the devil's cut. The angel's share refers to the portion of whiskey that evaporates during aging. On the flip side, the devil's cut is the liquid absorbed by the wooden barrels during the maturing process. Weird thing number 2. The whiskey making process generally involves the following steps. Malting. Barley is soaked in water, allowed to germinate, then dried in a process called malting. This activates enzymes in the barley that convert starches into fermentable sugars. Mashing. The malted barley or other grains are ground into a coarse powder known as grist. This grist is mixed with hot water in a process called mashing, allowing the enzymes to further break down starches into sugars, creating a sugary liquid known as wort. Fermentation. The wort is transferred to fermentation vessels, usually made of wood or stainless steel, and yeast is added. The yeast ferments the sugars in the wort, producing alcohol and other byproducts. Distillation. The fermented liquid, now known as wash or beer, is distilled in copper stills. Distillation separates the alcohol from the wash, creating a higher proof distillate. Maturation. The distilled spirit is then aged in wooden barrels, usually made of oak. The aging process allows the whiskey to develop its flavors, aromas, and character as it interacts with the wood. And finally, weird thing number 1. The biggest names in whiskey have very distinct histories and idiosyncrasies. Jameson, produced by the Irish distillers subsidiary of Pernod Ricard. Jameson is one of the most recognizable names in Irish whiskey. It is a triple distilled process that sets it apart from many other whiskeys. The triple distillation is said to contribute to the smoothness of the final product. Jack Daniel's. Known for its Tennessee whiskey, Jack Daniel's is produced by the Jack Daniel Distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Jack Daniel's is known for its charcoal mellowing process, where the whiskey drips through sugar maple charcoal before aging. This process imparts a smooth and distinctive character to the spirit. Johnnie Walker. Famous for its Scotch whiskies, Johnnie Walker is a brand owned by Diageo. It offers a range of blends from the iconic Johnnie Walker Red Label and Johnnie Walker Black Label. The iconic Johnnie Walker logo features a striding man. The figure is a representation of John Walker, the founder of the brand, and his commitment to forward progress. Maker's Mark. Famous for its red wax sealed bottles, Maker's Mark produces bourbon whiskey in Loretto, Kentucky. The brand is known for its distinctive wheated mash bill. The distillery has published a cookbook called Whiskey and Food, a Cookbook. It explores the pairing of Maker's Mark whiskey with various dishes. It includes recipes from renowned chefs. Well, that's it for today's episode. Hope it left a smooth aftertaste. I would say let me know in the comments, but you're all kind of aware of that already. And for those still watching, the code word is mash bill. Put that in the comments for some really good karma. Take care. Have a great night.